And we'll move to our panel on modern remuneration solutions for creators. And our speakers for this panel are Jakob Felländer, who is a photographer, Paulina Holmgren, who is an IAF steering committee member and also a photographer, and Alfons Karabuda, composer and president of the International Music Council. And I mentioned off the top that, the IAF did this wonderful webinar about the author share program in the United Kingdom, which is just such an innovative and surprising new revenue stream for authors in the UK. And I think we need that level of innovation sort of across the board. So I'm hoping to hear some good stories. Who am I looking at on the screen?
Alfons.
This is Alfons. So
Alfons is here. Hi.
Why don't you start us off since I'm looking at you?
Well,
welcome.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm used to speaking to my colleagues, but I haven't been with you before. But I know that we have a lot in common. I am, as you said, I'm a composer, and I used to be on the Pirate Party's less liked list as well. So I would have loved to join the previous panel as well. But maybe some of the things that we're going to discuss now will also be of help as tools also in safeguarding our authors' rights and copyright in a way. So I don't know how you wanted to set this up, if you want it as a panel or if you want me to just start off with some examples and then we continue speaking.
Sure, I would love to hear some examples, yes.
Okay, so I can give you an example of some of the things that we're working on now from a music aspect, but would work as well with photographs or articles. And it has the base or the foundation of blockchain and NFT technique. And when I say this, some people will just say, oh, NFTs, auctions and selling things. But it's really about the smart contract technology that lies behind it. And why we're working with this is for several reasons. It makes it possible for us to put some pressure on the platforms, streaming services and DSPs. We have, as you might know, we have a copyright directive that has passed in the EU, but we are now working in several of the EU countries in implementing. And what our counterparts often say is that they love what we're doing. They would love to be of help, but unfortunately, the technology does not allow it, which is a bit strange because organizations like Facebook say that they have no control over the data that they have. They don't know what people are doing or what they have, what kind of content, which is strange because I only have to think about something and then I get the commercials in my stream phone. So, which is a strange coincidence, by the way. So, what we are doing is getting a bit away from, at least I don't know how it is in your areas of culture, but in music we have been quite on our guard, especially when it comes to technology. Even if we like and love technology, it has also been something that has made us vulnerable, not the least because of piracy, as you mentioned before. But we can also see that technology now is and can be an enabler. And this is what we're pushing for, green technology as enablers. And I'm going to give you an example. We're working with a company called the New Internet Media. And besides having the goal for correct and fast distribution, and I'm not selling for the company, by the way, I'm a composer for an independent organization, but we're trying to be together with different companies and developing technology instead of how we have acted before. We've usually just been presented with something that is already there and not really fulfilling its purpose, seen from our perspective. So what we've been doing is making sure that we can get our money distributed correctly and faster. And this is done through the technology based on blockchain, but it's more of a fintech solution. You can think of it as making, if we talk about music, making the royalty flow as fast as music does in streaming, which is not really that difficult now. It was impossible a few years ago. And let me give you an added value before I explain what we actually can do with this technology in the royalty flow. And this is an extra. And I think this is something that could be of interest also for you. And that is that registering on this blockchain is something that could make obstacles for disinformation or fake news. It can have an enormous potential because of the use of this decentralized and immutable ledgers. You can record information in a way that can be verified and re-verified and really almost impossible to alter after it's been created. So this can verify provenance. So because I heard you talk already before of how to differentiate originals and copies. And you can also maintain an online identity and reputation. And all of this has something to do also, I'm getting to that, in us getting a higher price and a value for what we create. Traditionally, the publisher was the primary source of a piece of content, maybe for a content's reputation. Maybe you would be more likely to believe an article if it was found in New York Times than on a website that you never heard about. But on a blockchain system, you can actually verify the identity of a content creator, of an author, and track the reputation for accuracy. And this is very interesting for us. So this is a way of incentivizing high quality content as well. So what we do really is that with the above in mind, it's easier also to see how a blockchain and smart contract provenance also can be used in registering copyright. And I'm not a lawyer, by the way, but I do have an interest, as all authors should. And the system that I'm talking about already exists. And some countries have legal possibilities of a registry for safeguarding copyright in a much safer way than before. And one example is in Wyoming, where since they passed their Bill 38, I think that was last July, you can actually, using the smart contract, register your piece of work, a song or anything else, like a small company in itself, with everything automated in sharing maybe revenues, royalty shares of what you've created, without having to sell your rights, because that's something that I'm against, the total buyouts. And this is just, this is a way of safeguarding the copyright. But what it does really, what you do is, the process is that with the copyright registered for provenance, you have it on the blockchain, in this case, the new internet media. The technology is designed on something called the Avalanche blockchain, so it's much more eco-friendly than what we've heard of before. I'm sure you all have heard about Bitcoin and how much gas or energy it consumes, but this technology is 8 million times less energy consuming than Bitcoin technology. So we're getting somewhere where we actually can use this. And just a few years ago, it all was too slow. But now, in order to be able to use this for collecting societies or PROs or CMOs, you can actually have about 200 million transactions per second, which means that you can register maybe 10,000 copyrights with metadata under an hour, with less consumption than a regular house would use in a month. So this means that you can transfer DSP royalties to a creator's account, and this all needs to be digital. And I think that it's when we try to mix digital and analog that we get problems. So when having this and you have a digital wallet with music, you can actually get your remuneration while the song is still playing. and you get it in your digital wallet. So that's how fast it is now, and without deductions having been made in several countries. So this is basically what this system is about. So I'll tell you very briefly again that first, music or article is written, created, and recorded, and the shares are agreed between the right holders. You get a copyright ID, and then you have the copyright ID and copyright shares combined with metadata, in your case, maybe ISBN, and an account is open for a right holder or a right holder representative if it's a collecting society. And the digital service provider manage their own subscriptions, and each stream is recorded onto a QLDB, and royalty automatically goes to your wallet. And what is important for us, I'm not sure that you use the same terminology, but what we talk about in music streaming is user-centric or service-centric or pro rata. And what I, as an author representative, strive for is the user-centric. That means that when somebody reads what you have done or listens to a song, that when someone has paid a subscription, that the money actually goes to whatever they listen or read to, and not an analogy that is based maybe on market share or often actually the highest earners, where you have the long tail with the really where the big diversity is, often not paid out, but really having the money invested. For Spotify, for example, it was the long tail that paid for the systems from the collecting societies working with the streaming services without getting their fair remuneration. So I'm not a tech guy at starting out as a tech guy, nor am I a lawyer, but I am a creator. I've been so professional since I was 15, and I see the benefits of this for me and my colleagues. And we've reached a point where we see that this actually works. So I would say that it has more to do now with how our ecosystem accepts change, because not everyone wants it. Not everyone wants transparency either. Or they want it, but they think that transparency costs too much, which is often what our counterparts say. So maybe I'll just leave it at that, and we'll continue the discussion. And I hope that, if not having explained it in detail, at least maybe inspired you a little bit.
Thank you, Alfons. For a non-tech guy, I think you did very, very well with the tech side of things. I know that in Canada, our collective management organization, Access Copyright, has been playing around in the smart contract space a little bit for authors, and there are some exciting solutions there. Let's go to Jakob, and let's talk about, from the photographer perspective. I have the feeling we might be talking about NFTs again.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Finally?
Yeah.
That's good. Yep. Nice to join you, and thank you, Alfons, for your presentation. It was it was impressive from a non-tech guy. I really agree. Yeah, from an artist perspective, if I'm a photo artist, I make art primarily analog. I use 100-year-old cameras and I rebuild them, and I also use charcoal and oil paint in my work. But for the past, I would say 10 years, I've been creating my images as virtual worlds. So I began in 2012 and 13 to make my first attempts of creating my own metaverses, to use a modern description of it. The reason why I did that was because I wanted to understand my images better. So I wanted to enter them and explore them from the inside. And I wanted to allow viewers at museums and galleries to enter my work as well. when the first VR headsets came around, I started using them, and it was always very important to use my analog images in conjunction with the new. So it's not the old or the new, it was the analog combined with the bleeding edge technology that I'm interested in. How can we use the modern accessible technology to experience art in a more how to speak, interactive way? How can we help the next generation to be interested in art? How can we use technology as Trojan horses for the next generation to start experiencing art and interacting with art? And from the very beginning up until today, making digital art or virtual worlds and VR experiences has been tremendously expensive. And there hasn't been a way to recoup any of those expenses. It has been a way to enhance the experience of an exhibition at a museum or a gallery, but it hasn't been any way to fund it except for selling physical art. And I am fine. I've chosen the path of an artist. I am 100% fine to die broke in the gutter, like I'm sure a lot of you guys are. But I'm not fine with not being able to create the visions that I have. And in physical art, it has been easier. In digital art, it has been much more expensive. Up until now, when there is actually a way, like Alfons really described as well, there is a way to sell a digital experience. So the images that I make inside a virtual world, or the augmented reality that comes out of my images, it can now be sold because there is a way to attach a contract to it, a digital contract to a digital experience. And for me, that's game changing, because this means that I can now create the visions that I have so many visions that I want to create. And there's a way to get financial energy into doing that. So that's one thing that has been really good with this, even though I've waited out the first initial boom that didn't really come from the art world, it came from the crypto world. But the second thing is, I 100% agree with you, Alfons, that the smart contract, which is different really than something that you sell into a market. A smart contract doesn't necessarily have a value. It can just be something that defies an owner and a creator. Just the fact that the NFTs that get sold for a lot of high dollars at auctions is that is a very, very small percentage of NFTs, and it can be used in so many other ways. And the smart contracts, like for instance, I'm a photographer. Obviously, we have editions. Editions has been the biggest problem in photography since photography started. Is this really art? Was the first contract. How do I know that you don't make 10 of these? Or how do I know that you only make 50 of these? Like, well, now we know. Here is a smart contract. There is 1 million computers that tells that you own this, and it's only one of them, and this is the one. There are a lot of interesting technologies where the smart contract come with a special liquid, like so you can paint on the side of an image so it can be scanned, and they're really, really good for the credibility of photography. This must not be confused with the crazy auction houses of a GIF monkey waving his hand. There's so many other interesting and good areas, especially when it comes to use it right. And as Alfons said, of course, if it's sold, the provenance of it is always kept in the smart contract, whereas it is now, if something of my work gets sold at Sotheby's, I have to rely on the honesty of Sotheby's to give me provenance from it. So I am an analog, and I'm an analog artist with 2 thumbs up on the way this type of technology can improve the conditions for for visual artists.
Thank you so much. Looking at the work behind you on the screen there, I was not imagining that you were dealing with GIF monkeys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's amazing. That's beautiful work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so our final panelist for this discussion is Paulina Holmgren from Sweden. And you'll be speaking to us about a number of things, but I understand, first of all, that there's a new copyright law in Sweden.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening, and thanks Jacob and thanks Alfons for sharing so much information. Alfons, I actually think you are a tech guy right now. Yeah, you know, the DSM directive is happening through Europe, and in Sweden we're working very hard right now, meetings with politicians. Working on this. Too bad we just heard that they will wait until after the elections now.
Oh, yeah.
So too bad, nothing will happen
We've
in July this
experienced
year.
that problem. Yeah, yeah.
That was our plan. I think actually the technology we have been talking about, the NFT, who started up more for like tech nerds. I think we as artists and authors need to be more open for the new technology in the future and see that this is our way to actually have a certificate that this is what the original, this is what I have created. So I think we need to be, I'm thinking of what we talked earlier about the piracy side of it. So it's, they have used the technology to do that. Now it's our turn to use the technology to show that this is our work and we need to get paid for what we're doing. So I think if we're open for that, I think we can actually be able to connect this to new copyright laws. So hopefully that's the future.
Yes. And are there actually like NFT galleries?
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening in Sweden right now. As Jacob told us at the beginning, there was more like another side of the NFTs, but now actually artists are using it as in galleries, and it's starting up with both if you buy the actual print, you also get NFT with it, so you got the the certificate that is you bought the original, and there's the guys behind Fotografiska. They started 10 years ago. They are now starting a new business with galleries focusing on digital screens in the gallery, and they also work with NFTs. So I think things are happening even for artists with NFTs.
So that's an interesting way to combine the analog and the digital.
Yeah.
If you buy the original, you also get the authentication.
Yeah, and also the negative. If you do, I've heard of that. Who's exhibiting the print also give away the negative to the analog photo and the NFT. So it's not all the way. It's definitely the original all the way. Yeah,
which addresses the authentication problem that Jakob was talking about. Well, that was excellent. I'm not going to ask the obvious question, what the heck's an NFT? I'll wait for somebody online to ask that question. I'm sure there's a lineup for it. Thanasis, do we have questions online? Nothing. Oh, okay.
Nothing.
We have a question here.
Quick question, comment. So,
What the heck's an NFT?
yeah.
It can be anything.
This may seem, far off into the future, but I don't think it is. Is the use of artificial intelligence to create new works, and already we're seeing AI being used to assist creators creating new works, but it is already the technology exists to, take, since I'm in literary works, I'll use a literary work example. But all romance novels were scanned and put into a database. And from that database, you can use AI technology to write a new book that's based on these pre-existing books, right? So, within 10 years, I'd say, this kind of technology will be really advanced. And we're going to see AI machines creating new works on their own without not just being tools for creators, but actually, technologists using AI machines to create new works. And you may see AI machines infringing also and using works. And it's going to be very hard to, without the use of NFTs, to in any way figure out where did the material originate from, who should be paid for it, who's the infringer even, how do you go after people? There's so many issues that I think are going to have to be threaded out. And I'm hoping the collecting societies around the world can help kind of figure those issues out. And I don't see a way to enforce copyright in the future without us all adopting some form of smart contracts.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
digital authentication.
Yeah. But, and one more thing on NFT. So one of my board members told me last week that, what is the C something is the main website now for NFTs, for buying NFTs, and that
OpenSea.
So what is it?
OpenSea.
OpenSea, thank you very much. That 85% of the content on it is pirated. Okay, so this is a new form of piracy too, where existing images are being taken, like from Dr. Seuss books, by people who don't own the rights, and then sold as NFTs. So that's just something else. Just one more thing we need to worry about.
Yeah, I think there's a steep learning curve for everyone around this technology and around what exactly it means. I read a story of an NFT that sold that was essentially a photograph of a book. And the people who bought the NFT of the photograph of a book believed they had bought the book, in other words, the copyright to the book, and made a big announcement about how they were releasing the text to the world, and didn't quite understand how it worked. Yeah.
So it's
oh yes, go ahead, Jakob.
yes, no, to your point there. Yes, the NFT, there's no real, the confusion gets NFT art. There is no such thing as NFT art. NFT is the contract of the actual purchase and the owner. So it's sometimes people confuse the art with the actual contract. If you would buy a soda can at the store, you would get maybe a little receipt, a paper receipt. This is what an NFT is. It's a digital receipt of something that you bought that was digital. So that confuses a lot of people, definitely.
And it doesn't mean that you own all of the soda in the world.
It can be other things. It can be tickets to an event.
Yeah.
It can be whatever. It's
And Rima, you have perspective on this, don't you?
Is it Rima who has a question?
Hi,
yeah,
I do. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Rima from Design and Artists Copyright Society UK, Collecting Society for Visual Artists. Thank you so much for the conversations that have been taking place today, because these are really interesting and very pertinent to what I've been looking at in the UK and what my colleagues have been looking at. We're very much both concerned and excited about NFTs and also the use of artificial intelligence and visual artistic works. And in terms of artificial intelligence, the UK's Intellectual Property Office was recently consulting on how the copyright framework should look, both for protecting the rights of a kind of AI-made artistic work or creative work, and then secondly, whether there should really be any more exceptions to copyright to try and enable text and data mining for artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of work that's been going on there. But the question that I actually had, which was really for Jacob, was about it's to your point, Jacob, on the NFT itself being the line of code that is effectively the receipt for buying, for example, your digital artwork. And then you also mentioned that editions being a very big problem in photography, both on the non-digital and digital side of things. And I just wondered how those two things, how NFTs were able to kind of solve the problem of editions, because I guess with the NFT that even if the code is sold, you still have a digital image, which could still be kind of right-clicked and saved somewhere else. So what value have you found from how you're interacting with your buyers for having something backed by NFTs?
Yeah, I think the biggest value is from the credibility, because the NFT world is transparent. So the blockchain is transparent. So I can give people transparency into, these are an addition of 3, usually my work would be. And these are the actual 3. You can even see who the other owners are. So that's one thing that really gives the credibility. Otherwise, it's mostly the photographer's or the gallerist's word. Here is actually transparency. Everyone can see it, and a million different computers are saying the same thing. So that's the helpful thing. But I'm also interested in the work that you mentioned about AI generated art, and because I use, since I have my own metaverse, my images, you can travel into my images, and that's its own metaverse. I've also released an AI in there to make images, mostly to investigate if an AI can create any type of magic, sometimes us artists and creators get blessed with some extra fairy dust or something that makes our work go from 1 + 1 = 5 all of a sudden, and then we work for 10 more years and that doesn't happen, and then it happens again. But it's interesting to see if you release an AI, it can obviously do the work, but will it be blessed by magic as well? Mm-hmm. It's an interesting, really interesting thing to try and investigate. Really hard to prove, though. But I use AI to that point as a palette, or as a brush, or as a just as a writer uses a typewriter or a computer or word processor, I can use AI in that sense. So in that case, sometimes it's just AI generated, but a lot of times it is, most of the time it's programmed by someone who is actually telling the AI to do something. So that makes the owner's right easier.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Rima. There is one more question on Zoom. Okay, this will be the last one because I want to get to the next panel. I want to talk about Iceland. Okay, next question.
I appreciate the clarity that.
That's Edward.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate the clarity that you've shed on the distinction between the blockchain as a tool for keeping immutable records of transfers of ownership and the question of how you initially establish ownership of the NFT or whatever it is, or correlate the NFT to the copyright, as John mentioned, and we have seen this problem of people issuing bogus NFTs corresponding to books that don't actually correspond to books. But despite the promise, I think we have to be careful that we might get what we asked for, that this might tend to lead us to a situation where the only way to establish copyright is to show a blockchain that traces back to something, let us say, digitally signed by the Copyright Office as the issuer of the NFT. And what you would get is an even more onerous mandatory registration system than we already have experienced the worst of in the US. So I think one should be very cautious about endorsing things that lead us into more formalities and to the potential of claims that, well, if you don't have that kind of signed original proof of authorship, you can't establish your claim, because that would be a profound reversal of the gains made in the Berne Convention automatic right of the author to ownership of rights in their work. Thoughts?
No, thank you for that, Edward. That's an important point to make. And yeah, we're looking for greater seamlessness, not less. Yes, I think in the interest of time.
Can I have a comment? Just sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
It's
please,
okay.
Alfons.
Just two very brief things. Let's not forget that we are also using AI in order to scan for our works digitally. And by finding how our works are being exploited, we are also enabling a fair remuneration from that. So AI is also helping in that sense. And also the last thing is that if we use technology like this, and technology that lowers the threshold for new players entering into our value chain, and that is more counterparts competing for our works and hopefully raising the tariffs and the price for it, that's a good thing. From a music side, I wouldn't want just to have Google or just YouTube or Spotify. We need more of them competing for what we create, and we are the enablers for their whole business models. So I'll end there. Thanks.
Thank you, Alfons. Okay, that was an excellent discussion.